What's going on, people? Welcome to another In Motion Football live stream. My name is Alam, and today we got playoff landscaping going into week 16. Only a couple more weeks left, not that many more iterations of this stream, so we're going to make the most of them while we still have them. Shout out to the 8 people watching live. I appreciate everybody that's tapped in. I see King is in here. I see Gail is in here. I see Mange is in here. Got a bunch of the very appreciated community members in here. Make sure everybody in here hits that like button and subscribes to the channel before we get started. Anybody watching this on replay, the same goes for you. You have the same opportunity to show your appreciation for the content. With that being said, we're gonna share our screen and get right into it. So, copying the same format from last week, we're gonna run it back. I do like the conversations that we had, but I switched it up just a little bit because last week I talked a lot about reliability, and I'm realizing I think talking reliability is a tough thing to talk about. I'm just going to talk about me trusting them. So the can win the conference versus can't win the conference, that access is the same. But the other one is, instead of reliability, I went with I don't trust them and I trust them, because this is very much about, I guess, just like whether I feel like I know what I'm going to get from them any given week. So I think that's the best way to kind of capture what I'm trying to get at. It's better than reliability. And I guess we'll start with the AFC. We typically always start with the AFC. First team, Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, they get to go right in the top right corner. They're a team that obviously has a very high ceiling, lots of upside. They somehow win every game. They somehow get big plays whenever whenever they need them. Carson Wentz might play on Saturday. Mahomes might be hurt, but truthfully, if Mahomes rests, I might look at that as like a better thing for them, because we've seen Mahomes play through injuries. We know he can do it, but imagine if he gets to rest. Like, I actually think it would be really stupid if they don't rest him. But like I said, they have a 2-game lead on Buffalo. They can't tie Buffalo, so really it's a 1-game lead. Really, it's Pittsburgh and Denver in the way, because they're, in the meantime, who do they play? Oh, they play Houston. I don't particularly trust Houston to beat them. So 2 teams are in their way. If they're a home team, if they have home field advantage throughout the playoffs and they have Mahomes, it's going to be hard to question them. So they definitely go there. That part is simple, right? The next team to talk about that I guess there's maybe a conversation about where they belong is Buffalo. And the conversation becomes is how close to Kansas City do you put Buffalo? And which factor is more of a thing? Like, I want to say that their defense getting shredded for 40 in back-to-back weeks has to be charged against them. And their repeated history of losing to the Chiefs has to get charged against them. I feel like the losing to the Chiefs part has to chip away at whether they can win the conference or not, because obviously they got to get through Kansas City. And I think the fact that we saw their defense get shredded for 40 points in back-to-back weeks, that has to impact trust. I didn't think that, and this is really what I'm trying to get at when I talk about trust, because I thought that they were a sound defense. They were playing pretty well, and that, again, you could trust them. And then they get hit for 40 points in back-to-back weeks, and then you realize, you know what? I didn't know that was possible. So maybe now, with all things considered, I can safely say that I don't know what to expect from their defense. They might have played a good game. They might get hit for 40. We don't know what's going to happen. So Buffalo, I think, again, they need to get hit with both accesses, like a little bit below Kansas City in trust and a little bit below Kansas City in ceiling. But Buffalo literally is right there, literally right on Kansas City's ass in this chart. Next 2 teams, I think we should talk about Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And I think they both had weeks that were interesting for different reasons. Baltimore, actually, you know what? No, yeah, we'll start with Baltimore. So Baltimore, I don't think. Look, I think it was hard to gain anything from the game against the Giants. Obviously, it was a great game. I think on the whole, their defense is becoming less and less shit. I still don't think it's a particularly good defense. I just don't think it's as much of a liability. But again, we'll see. You can't make a huge deal about how they played against the Giants. Offensively, they got rid of Deontay Johnson, so that ended up being a hilarious trade. Everybody talked about how bad the value was for Carolina in that trade, and oddly enough, somehow, some way, ended up being a great deal for Carolina. But Baltimore, I had them in this area last time. I feel like I had them in this area where I acknowledged that the ceiling was pretty high. What I have to say though, under no circumstances can we say their ceiling is higher than Buffalo's. Absolutely under no circumstances can we say that. So Baltimore ceiling has to, at the very minimum, be, or like at the very maximum, I guess, be where Buffalo's is. It, but I feel like I've seen a little bit more. Like I've definitely seen more from Buffalo, and I definitely trust Buffalo's defense more, even though they got hit for 40 back-to-back weeks. So their ceiling has to be a little bit below Buffalo. And then in terms of trust, they haven't done anything to earn the trust back yet. So I think they could be over here. They have opportunities to earn the trust back. Obviously, games against Pittsburgh and Houston coming up. If they show out in those two games, you could definitely see them sliding across the table into this area. I think they could end up here if they get W's. But as of now, yeah, the ceiling has to be a bit below Buffalo's, and the trust factor, we got to see some more games to earn the trust factor back. But I'm putting Baltimore in this area, and then Pittsburgh. Okay, Pittsburgh is fascinating. I'm not placing them here. I'm just leaving the logo here. Pittsburgh, right? In terms of trust, I'm kind of surprised. I don't know. I kind of almost don't want to make that big of a deal of what happened against Philadelphia, just because I actually think that they ran into a buzzsaw. Like they ran into a pissed off team, like a team that was pissed at their own media, like a really good team that was pissed at their own media. And unfortunately, they just caught a great game from Philadelphia. I was surprised that we were able to produce against their defense, but I mean, I'm looking at it. I'm like, we just played a perfect game, and when we play a perfect game, I think everybody's in trouble. Defensively, I mean, like when in terms of Pittsburgh's offense, again, didn't have George Pickens, and when you think about how important a team's only deep threat is, anytime a team only has one respectable deep threat, if that player is missing, that's a huge loss. So, man said, nah, bro, we're overrated and trash. That's hilarious. So I'm thinking with Pittsburgh, right? The ceiling has to be a little bit lower than Baltimore's. And that's strictly based off QB potential, right? And then in terms of the trust factor, here's the thing. I had them all the way here last week. I don't know if they necessarily did. Like, I don't want to knock them too much for this week. I think this week we'll put them here. I think in terms of the trust factor, I'm comfortable with saying they're similar to Buffalo, where I still feel pretty good about what I expect from them on a week-to-week basis, that I'm going to get good defense. I'm going to get a good running game. Again, I just think they ran into a buzzsaw. Like, I think with the way the Eagles were pissed off that game, everybody would have caught it on that particular day. So, like I said, I think Pittsburgh, they got knocked in the trust factor a little bit, but for the most part, I still think that you have to put that game into context. So I have Pittsburgh over here. Houston, who are the remaining teams in the AFC that you really have to think about is Houston. Keep the faith, King. I mean, the thing about Pittsburgh too is that, like, oddly enough, I think it's the next two games against Baltimore and Kansas City where the trust is really going to get tested. And that's not even necessarily about the outcomes, but like, I think they're probably going to give Lamar headaches, and they're probably going to give Patrick Mahomes headaches too. But yeah, that's where I have Pittsburgh. And then for Houston, the Chargers and the Broncos, which is what we expect to be the remaining playoff teams. So they're all going to go in this quadrant. There we go. Yeah, they're all definitely going in this quadrant. Zoomed in too much. Okay. But in terms of how I feel about them, right? I have no trust. Whoa. I don't like that it does that. I have no trust in the Chargers at all. Actually, I lied. Okay, I don't have trust in the Chargers themselves. If you just isolate for them, even if we win those games, wouldn't still mean shit. Beat the Ravens, okay. Baltimore ain't like that. Still overrated. Um, you know what it is though? Okay, for me personally, I can only really speak for myself. I'll give Pittsburgh a ton of credit for beating Baltimore, and this is why, right? If you think about this game, Baltimore's back is against the wall, and Pittsburgh's really isn't. Like, because if Pittsburgh wins the game, Baltimore is officially eliminated from AFC North like contention. The division is clinched, and Baltimore is automatically a wild card team, right? If Baltimore wins the game, the division is still up for grabs, and actually Pittsburgh has the tiebreaker as of now. So the thing is, the irony is, this isn't an even game in terms of motivation. So if the team that needs the game less wins the game, to me that's very impressive. So I'm gonna give Pittsburgh a ton of credit if they beat Baltimore. Like, I think that's a huge game. I really think the odds are stacked against them. For one, again, you don't have Pickens. Two, you don't need the game as badly as Baltimore. Baltimore's back's against the wall. Nobody wants to play road playoff games. And again, Pittsburgh can lose and still win the division technically. Obviously, it's not a great bet because Pittsburgh has to play Kansas City, which I think they're going to beat Kansas City still, right? But obviously, that's a tough game. Baltimore has pretty easy opponents. But yeah, like, Baltimore has everything to play for. So I would be very impressed with Pittsburgh if they win this game. But yeah, in terms of these teams, I don't think I trust either of them. But I say, here's the thing. I'm going to say I trust the Chargers a little bit more because of Harbaugh. And assuming Dobbins is going to be back, they're going to get back to running the ball. So you take into account the fact that, like, I still think they probably have a better thing going. I think their record is on par with Houston and Denver's records because Dobbins is out. But yeah, I think on account of trust, probably Chargers a little bit more than the Texans and the Broncos, who I do not trust at all, because the Broncos defense, while it plays really, really good, sometimes it simply just doesn't. Sometimes they play like shit. I have seen it enough. So that's where I'm at with those two, or like when it comes to trust. When it comes to how I feel about these teams winning the conference, I mean, I guess it's 0 for each of them. So, like, I guess Chargers get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I do find it interesting how I always fall into extremes when I do this activity. Like, the middle of the chart should 100% be used a little bit more. But yeah, no. Or maybe the logos could be bigger. Could I make, no, can't make the logos bigger. All right. Well, that's the AFC for you. Pretty clear how I feel about the fact that there's 4 teams you have to think about and 3 teams you can more or less forget about. But yeah, I think ideally, or not ideally, I think the overwhelming likelihood is that these are the 4 teams that are playing on divisional weekend. Overwhelming likelihood are these are the 3 teams that lose on wildcard weekend. So we can sit here and talk about, we can sit here and talk about playoff chances and whatever and matchups, but I think pretty simply, when it comes to the AFC and the playoffs, can we just sim to the divisional round? Because that's really when things are going to get interesting. When these 4 teams are matched up against each other, that is when football is about to be sensational. But yeah, in the meantime, we just have to watch these games, I guess, and try to think about how the teams match up against each other. Okay. We are going to move on to the NFC now. So, NFC, we're going to start with the 1 seed. We're going to start with Detroit. Detroit, I think, got hit on both accounts. They got hit in terms of ceiling because of the injuries. Montgomery and Aleem McNeil are huge losses. Absolutely huge losses. Aleem McNeil, they paid him this offseason over $20 million a year. Disruptive player in the middle. I think they have DJ Reader to plug up the run. And he's the closest thing they have to a pass rushing presence from the middle of the defensive line. And as most people who really know ball will tell you, a pass rush from the middle of the pocket is the most disruptive for a quarterback because it gets them off their spot the quickest. and like again, like in the most disruptive manner. So that's a huge loss, especially for a gritty team like Detroit. And then you look at the other side, David Montgomery, absolutely huge loss because he keeps Gibbs fresh. He provides um a unique skill set in the sense of like he's such a good power back, but he's not a easy like he's not a tell. Like there's a lot of power backs like Montgomery that because they can't catch the ball, they're pretty easy tells. Well, you know when they're on the field that it's a running play. And if it's a passing play, they're probably pass blocking, right? So you can kind of like make some conclusions about what the play is based on those things. So yeah, he's unique in that sense. I think Gibbs is amazing, and I think Gibbs will flourish and do fine as an individual. But in terms of the team, Detroit got hit, man. So Detroit, I think Detroit belongs in like this like Buffalo territory, but like maybe even a little bit less for both. Like Detroit's clustered in here now. We're gonna have to see how they cope. We're gonna have to see if they get any more injuries because it's not even just those two. Carlton Davis, broken jaw. This is a team that plays a ton of man coverage, especially in important downs. So when you have to play random cover corners in big moments, they're gonna suffer, man. Like this is man, we're really gonna see when they play Minnesota. I don't think we're gonna see it. We're gonna see anything at all against Chicago. I think Chicago's a little bit too shit. But I don't know. Maybe San Francisco. No, actually, not really. Debo's too fat right now. So yeah, we're gonna see how Detroit's impacted when they play Minnesota. But yeah, man, horrible, horrible, horrible week for them. But yeah, Detroit's knocked down into that area. Philadelphia. So I think what we saw this week is in my opinion, like I said, a very angry team that played the best game of the year. I think this makes clear that Philadelphia, in terms of like ability to win the conference, they should be at the absolute top because the upside of this team is ridiculous. However, the trust factor, I think last week I had them I had them like here, like kind of middling with the trust factor. I think they earned I hate that. They earned some of the trust back, but we have to see a game like that again. If you only ever do it once in a situation where the media, Will says, don't put Seattle on that grid, man. Yo, bro, because Gino got hurt, I'm just assuming that they're not going to make the playoffs. So I'm only putting the Rams. So don't worry. I'm kind of factoring that the Rams are going to get that division now. So you're saved, bro. You're saved. But just be clear, if I had to put Seattle there, they're going with the Broncos and the Texans. But yeah, shout out to Will, bro. Good to see you. But yeah, the Eagles, they have to play like that again to earn the trust back. If they go and smoke Washington like they should, then I think that you put them where the Chiefs are. Like they earn a lot more trust back. But otherwise, we still got to see more. Again, like I think Philly and Baltimore were close last week, and they're close again. Like Philly and Baltimore belong in the same kind of area of, we know this team's upside is really high, but we just don't see it enough. They're very unique teams in that way. I think the only two teams that stand out, again, for like similarly having that issue. But actually, from this point, I don't want to go to the 3 seed and the 4 seed. I want to go right to Minnesota and Green Bay, because that's where shit gets interesting. Minnesota, you know what? Yeah, no, I'll do Minnesota first. Minnesota, I think, is a team that I look at really highly in terms of trust, because I trust their coaching staff. And this isn't about Sam Darnold, but my point is I trust Minnesota to put Sam Darnold in advantageous situations. I trust the coaching staff to coach their asses off. I trust Brian Flores to have a good game plan. I trust that team a lot. My issue of ceiling, I mean, like, I think, again, like, they're like the NFC Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, my issue with ceiling comes down to quarterback play. Sam Darnold is simply, he's just not going to get the job done and get to a Super Bowl. There's going to come a point in time where having the Darnold comes back to bite you in the ass. So that's kind of why I put them here. To me, again, I would have a hard time putting them above Pittsburgh. Like, again, Minnesota and Pittsburgh, I think they're like the same way I kind of put Philly and Baltimore in the same boat. Pittsburgh and Minnesota, I put them in similar boats, man. Like, I cannot put them ahead of Pittsburgh. Again, I trust them a little bit more because, truthfully, they've played a little bit more consistently, I would say. Pittsburgh's had like, now I think they have similar records. Like, I think Pittsburgh has what, 3 losses? Minnesota has 2. But yeah, I think I've seen a little bit more consistency from Minnesota. But yeah, same boat for sure. And then Green Bay. Green Bay is interesting because for the people who were here last week, right? Actually, for the people who've been watching these streams for a couple weeks now, my point with Green Bay has always been this. I don't think Jordan Love is going to undertake the growth he needs to have. Like he's not going to grow the way you need him to be a consistent player. He's still going to be, as of now, going to be a gunslinger. He's going to throw the ball around the field, and it might work, it might not work. And if that's the main focal point of your team's performances are just going to go up and down with the success rate of his gunslinging. However, if you could ever establish the ground game, that's something that could give you some stability, right? In games where Jordan Love's gunslinging is not really working, if you could have a running back that's able to really carry, that would be sensational. Josh Jacobs last week, what did he have? I'm looking at what 136 yards. 136 yards on 28 touches. Not a dominant game in terms of yards per touch, but again, he was able to tote the rock. No, 30 touches. He was able to tote the rock 30 times, get, hard-earned yards. And if Josh Jacobs can get going, they also have a backup running back. They get some touches too. But my point is, if they can have a very good running game, it gives them a different level of stability, right? For me, that was the big thing that was the big thing for the trust factor. I think Green Bay last week, the main thing I talked about, I think like I had them, I want to say here-ish. And the reason I didn't trust them again is because like you can't trust a gunslinger because gunslinging is inherently an up and down thing. It's like 3-point shooting in basketball. When you just like aggressively go for high upside, low percentage things, it's always just going to go up and down. But a running game is a stabilizing force. I think Green Bay definitely earned some trust with the way Jacobs played. It'll be important to monitor how that develops going forward. But I think, again, if they can just commit to, I mean, Jacobs touching the ball 30 times is a lot, but like I would go as far to say that Jacobs touching the ball 30 times a game is a great thing for them. So yeah, what I would say though, I mean, like, okay, so their defense is progressing. You didn't really see, I don't think a game against Seattle, especially with Sam Howell, is a great indicator. But I think the tricky thing about them versus a team like Pittsburgh and Minnesota, right? Pittsburgh and Minnesota have defenses with like much higher upsides than the Packers. So I feel like, but then again, the Packers quarterback play, like there's higher upside with the Packers quarterback play. Okay, I want to put Green Bay on the same kind of, give them a similar ceiling to Pittsburgh and Minnesota, but I can't give Green Bay much more trust than Philadelphia. So I think Green Bay belongs here. Okay, Green Bay, again, similar ceiling to some of the other teams there, Pittsburgh and Minnesota, particularly similar trust level to Philadelphia. The same way how I want to see Philadelphia dominate more, I want to see Jacobs dominate more, and then both those teams could get more trust. And then with Baltimore, the thing they can do to earn more trust is that they got to play defense at a high level more consistently. So that sorts out where Green Bay goes. And what are the remaining teams? So the remaining teams that were going to be Tampa Bay, LA, and Washington. Okay, so Tampa Bay just put up 40 on a team. Very high in the trust. You know what? Okay, they're going to go over here. Tampa Bay. Kirk Cousins just got benched. Atlanta has entered the chat, people. Okay, we're gonna talk about that at the end of these the landscaping. But that's fun. That's fun. We're gonna get a little conversation going about that. But yeah, so Tampa Bay, I trust the shit out of them. I trust Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield in the playoffs. I trust Todd Bowles individually. I've grown to trust Baker Mayfield. They have a running game that they haven't had since Leonard Fournette, when they had Brady. And that's playoff Lenny too. Like, this is a better regular season rushing attack than they had. This is the best rushing attack in the regular season they've had for a long time. So that helps for the trust factor. I trust the shit out of Tampa Bay. The thing is that they're just not as good of a team as all these teams, I think. So they have to be behind everybody in terms of chances of winning the conference. But man, I trust them a lot. My trust for this team is heavy. Rams and Commanders. Rams. Okay, I kind of chances of winning the conference. I'm going to put them in the middle, but I'm going to up the trust with the Rams. The reason I say that is because the Rams are settling into the team that we saw at the end of the year last year. And if you take the end of last year, you take the end of this year, there's a pretty big sample size for them showing up as a pretty solid team, right? They run the ball effectively. They get after the quarterback. They're not a particularly great run defense, but we saw them go crazy against Buffalo offensively. They played like shit offensively against the Niners. I'm going to go ahead and say road, short week, divisional game, throw that in the trash. That's what I'm assuming, right? If they similarly have a bad game offensively, we're definitely going to have to revisit that. But as of now, again, ceiling between their run defense, their youth on defense. Yeah, those are the main things. Between their youth on defense and their run defense, I don't think they really have chances. But again, I definitely trust this team. I definitely trust this team because, again, we have a pretty decent sample size for who they are. And then Washington, last team to talk about in the NFC. I know. Bro, Will, I just saw that. We're going to get to that in a second. Last team to go. Washington. You know what? They belong over here. I don't trust them because of Cliff Kingsbury's history in this time of the year. I don't trust them because they have a pretty fugazi offense. I don't trust them because they don't have a great supporting cast around Daniels. And I don't think they have any chances of winning the conference. So it's going to be pretty low. You know what? They have to go right in the corner. So yeah, they have to go right in the corner. Chargers get a little bit of trust with Harbaugh to escape the corner. But 3 teams in the corner, Houston, Denver, and Washington, that I just have no hopes for in the playoffs. Yeah, that's what it is. That's the playoff landscaping, people. This is how I feel about all the teams heading into week 16. And we will be here to monitor how I feel about all these teams. Going into week 17 this time next week. However, what I'm about to do is I'm about to pull up a big breaking news. Let me pull up what is Twitter saying. Here we go. You want to be slow now, fam? All right, so the Falcons are making a major change as Michael Penix Jr. is expected to take over at quarterback with Kirk Cousins going to the bench. Atlanta is in the thick of the playoff hunt, and Cousins has struggled mightily. Now Penix takes over. So what does this mean for Atlanta? It means that their chances of being a good offense have gone up because their chances were 0 with Kirk Cousins. Now they might be 0 with Penix, but there's a chance they're not. There's a chance it's not 0. So that's the upside. As for what this means for their record, right? They're 1 game behind Tampa. The issue for them is this is a little too late, as I don't think Tampa Bay is going to lose a game. Tampa Bay, I think their chances of beating the Cowboys and the Saints very high, close to 100. Their chances against the Panthers, probably like 95. You never know. The Panthers randomly have played some good games this year, right? So for Atlanta to have any hope, they have to win out. Their remaining games are going to be against the Giants, the Commanders, and Panthers. Their chances against the Giants, I think, were always 100% because the Giants are really shit. However, I gave them no chance against the Commanders with Kirk Cousins. I think they now have maybe a 33% chance against the Panthers. I gave them like I would say like a 40% chance of beating the Panthers. I kind of liked Carolina in that Week 18 matchup. However, now I'd say they're probably favorites. Probably have like a 70% chance of winning. They had no like in summation, I thought they had no chances of winning out with Kirk Cousins. They now have some chances to win out. So this is a big move for them. Penix is going to make games interesting. But if you guys don't know, they just flexed the Week 17 game, Falcons and Commanders, to Sunday Night Football. So December 29th, Sunday Night Football is going to be Commanders, Falcons. That game has now just become very, very interesting. You got Penix against Jaden, battle of rookie quarterbacks, battle of two teams that like in a roundabout way, right? So right now, Commanders and Falcons are 2 games apart. If the Commanders lose to the Eagles and the Falcons beat the Giants, those 2 teams are now 1 game apart, and then they play each other. And then so Atlanta has a chance to beat the Commanders, have the same record, and the tiebreaker going into the last week. So now, actually, you know what? Atlanta's best chance is probably that. Their best chance is probably to catch the Commanders in the wild card race. So Atlanta just made the end of the year fun as fuck. That's what I will say. And that's pretty awesome. I'm very excited for that. And yeah, Atlanta just became watchable again. I was kind of discouraged about the idea of doing Falcons Commanders Sunday Night Football as a watch along when Kirk was playing, but I'm fucking thrilled now. This is amazing. So shout out to everybody that's tapped in. 9 people still watching live. There's been roughly 9-10 people the whole time. That's a pretty solid return. Shout out to everybody tapped in. Make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel on your way out. We're going to wrap this up here. However, for those of you who, damn, it might be hard to, no, I'll do it from my phone. For those of you who might not be familiar, I do not just do NFL YouTubing, content creating. I also have an NBA channel, and I'm actually about to go to my NBA channel right now to do a watch along for the NBA Cup final. Thunder against Bucks. So I'm about to get that started pretty soon. I'm gonna drop the link in the chat right now. And you guys that don't want the content to end, this is where you can go to follow me on this ride. So yeah, I'm about to end this stream here. We're gonna move to Toronto Hoop Talk, my NBA channel, to watch OKC and Milwaukee. And I hope to see you guys there. Big up to everybody that's tapped in. I will see you guys on Sunday for Broncos Chargers.